Welcome to the Lightning Zone and our very first showdown.
Haha.
Amy and I don't always agree, and shocking. And that's what's fun about the story code. It's not pat set answers or right or wrong definitions for things. What it does is it reveals patterns, and story is human. Story is messy. Story is as variant as our DNA makes us as different and a variant from each other. And that's what makes it so much fun. So we don't always agree. And so when we have a difference of opinion, we're going to do a show called Showdown, where we each get to make 3 points about what we think is right. And then the other person gets to make their 3 points, and we're going to just have a really interesting conversation because we actually love when we don't agree. We think it's so much fun. So today's topic is Katniss Everdeen an anti-hero? So this is from the first book or film of the Hunger Games, and we Amy thinks that Katniss Everdeen is an anti-hero. I think she is a traditional hero. And so we're going to start. And I actually get to start myself. So here's my point number one. Katniss did not start her own story. So in the beginning, we have the initial equilibrium disruptor and the IED, and it is the person or force that causes the inciting incident or the story to be going forward. And that is when Prim's name is called to participate in the Hunger Games for her district. Katniss would never have been chosen to be in the Hunger Games, and that makes her a traditional hero, in my opinion. Because a satiric hero, especially an anti-hero, definitely starts their own story. And so there you go. That's my point number one. What do you have to say about that, Amy?
So I would say that she does choose to go into the Hunger Games. Now, her motives it doesn't matter. You can walk out into the street with your nose in your phone and you can get hit. Well, you did it to yourself, whether you knew you were doing it or not. It's like you pay the consequences. If somebody shoves you into the street and you're hit, oh, everybody's like that's where you get all the sympathy. And okay, I'm seeing as I'm saying this that yes, although Katniss did choose, and whether and she did know the consequences, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
but she was forced into it because of her sister. Her sister would never have survived the games. Um, that maybe it's a 1-2 punch.
It's definitely a 1-2 punch. I will concede that one, Prim's name gets called, and two, Katniss decides to go into the fray to save her sister. So there is a blending there at the IED, but I would still say that she chose to enter in a self-sacrificing way for her sister, which would point her towards a traditional hero.
Versus an anti-hero who would not. That is true. That
All
is true.
right, what is your first point,
So
Amy?
my first point is that an anti-hero will kill. All right, and there's death in those stories. So an anti-hero, I think Katniss it would kill if she was made to kill. And actually she does at the Horn of Plenty. She does kill somebody there. Um, and so
She kills throughout.
anti-heroes kill.
There's a lot of death up and down the axis of antagonism from anti-heroes. It's very true. I'll agree. But I will counter that with my point number two. Katniss only killed when necessary. Of course, our traditional heroes also kill. Luke blew up a whole bunch of people in the Death Star, and et cetera, et cetera. It's just, but the difference is always, is it self-sacrificing or is it self-serving? An anti-hero is only out for themselves and what they want, and they are self-serving and self-sacrificing. We have examples. She only killed when absolutely necessary, and she went out of her way to help whenever she could. So she didn't have to, well, we'll get to that. I was gonna say she didn't have to help PETA, but you're gonna blow that theory full of holes later, one of your points. But she didn't have to help Rue. That absolutely, I mean, okay, you can be jaded. Some people are jaded, like Amy, and
Yeah.
and they'll say, "Oh, she only helped Rue to get popularity because she knew that's what she needed to win the games." I'm just saying that I believe she helped Rue out of the goodness of her heart.
Now I agree with that there.
Okay.
Honestly, I do think she helped Rue, and she deliberately did not kill Rue when she could have.
Yeah.
But I think that the fact that she didn't just lay down and let somebody else kill her, or just die from hunger or whatever, didn't go to the Horn of Plenty and stuff. The fact that she did take that action and killed that other tribute is, it leans towards the anti-hero in my mind.
Okay.
That she's not going to just be Gandhi and give herself up and just not participate and die.
Well, Gandhi was a tragic hero, but
There's that. There's that.
You know, I totally concede she's in it to win it. I definitely see that for sure. Okay.
And I agree. I like that view of saying, oh, okay, yeah, a traditional hero. Not just the self-sacrificing or self-serving part, but the fact that a traditional hero will kill.
Yeah, they do. Again, when necessary. They're not out. They don't.
When necessary.
Don't have any interest in killing indiscriminately. Yeah. Okay. So what is your point number 2?
So my point number 3 is
2.
Oh,
we're on 2.
Sorry. My point number 2 is PETA. I don't think she truly loved PETA. I think through that cave scene, PETA's dying basically, and in order to get, a little thing coming from the sky, that she had to play a game. At least at the beginning, she was playing a game. She had Hey Mitch's advice in her ear, and she was playing the audience because the people of Panem were very powerful in the story, and she played to it. We don't know. We're not in her head, so we don't know her motives. We don't get into any of that. We just see her actions and a look. I keep going because I can see her mind spinning where she decides she's going to, play Hey Mitch's game. Yeah.
So, it's funny because this is not the first time we've had this conversation.
No, it's not.
And every time we have it, I'm like, oh, she makes good points. Here's the thing. I don't disagree with you on any of that. I think all that's going on. And what's interesting about an anti or a rogue hero, a satiric hero, is there's always doubling. They're not quite what you think they are. And there's an element of that to Katniss. Now, it didn't come naturally to her. She's more of a go in and make it happen, and almost hit them with an arrow to get their attention, kind of. But she learns through desperation because she's pretty smart, and through Hey Mitch's advice that she does have to play the game, and she starts to do it, which introduces a bit of doubling into her role. So I agree with that, but I still have to go back to why is she doing that. I think that and I don't agree at this point that she's in love. I think that throughout the course of the story she might be growing maybe a love. Does she love him at the very end of the series? I think so. But I totally agree that she's playing a part. I guess the real question for me would be at the end, is she willing to, she's gambling and still playing a role, I think, with the berries. However, is she willing to risk death to not have to kill PETA? I think she might be. What do you think? That's where it really push comes to shove.
So, does that bring me to my point 3?
Yes, go ahead. Unanswered question. Go ahead.
I'm avoiding it a little bit right now, okay? I'm putting it down the road.
Okay.
I believe that Katniss is manipulative. And I think if not for the berries, if that idea had not come forward, then would I have to ask, would she have killed PETA to save her sister? Who is more important, PETA or her sister, who she 100% believed would not be taken care of because their mother was so emotionally damaged?
Well, and also it's not only PETA versus her sister, but it's also versus her own soul, her own heart, right? What to kill someone that's a friend, at least now a friend. I think that there is, I'm not saying she's
And
totally in love with
we
him,
do
but
see that scene where she feels like PETA saved her with the bread, right?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think that there is some authenticity in that growing relationship. And what would have she done? So I don't have the answer to any of that, which is one of the things I think that makes the story rather delicious, actually, is that we never really know. And I think she's brilliant enough to pull off all sorts of machinations. And yes, of course she's manipulating. We could say she's a traditional hero who has good strategy. It's
oh, pull
all in how
that
you
one out of your
frame it.
hat. I haven't heard that one yet.
It's all in how you
Okay.
frame it. So I concede that yes, she's manipulative, and yeah, I mean, I don't always know what's going on in her heart, and I think that that's makes the story very interesting.
Well, and this is where I really applaud the author. I mean, goodness sakes, to lead us through all of that, still liking. I mean, this is what's really fascinating to me is that she's got us liking what I feel is an anti-hero, which is incredibly unusual. We do not like anti-heroes, or we kind of side with the very dangerous ones until we get that gotcha moment. And I was
Right. If
waiting,
we
like,
don't know, if we
yeah, the
don't know
ones
they're an
we don't
anti-hero.
know, like in
Yeah.
Primal Fear and Aaron Stampler, or in Usual Suspects and Kaiser Soze. I don't think we hate Kaiser Soze. We think he's kind of
Secret
clever.
window. Yeah, we
Secret
don't know
Window
all.
with Mort Rainey. I mean, we side with them kind of, when they're going through their story, and then we get that gotcha.
Yeah.
So Katniss is not that type of anti-hero. So,
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up those guys because I'm like going anti-heroes, Katniss. I don't think one of these
right?
things is not like the other.
Katniss is not that kind of a traditional anti-hero.
So
Okay. Did I
I'm gonna
just
make
say
my
a
third point.
traditional anti-hero? Is that a blend? No, that's
It could be. Maybe she is a blend. So this is coming up to my third point, which I think is the mic drop. I think it's the final word in all of this. But yeah, let me just say it, and then we'll see what I'll see if your mind is blown. Now, point number 3 is a traditional hero is self-sacrificing and an anti-hero is self-serving. And I think this is so important in the story code. We have to look into the heart of the hero, and it's important because the kind of hero not only tells us information about the hero, but it really strongly points to the kind of story. So a drama is going to have a traditional hero, and a satire, a dark satire, is going to have an anti-hero. And it's the same wins and losses. That main character wins and the system loses, which is what we get in Hunger Games.
yes.
But in a satire, it's those dark, negative forces and self-serving heart of the anti-hero that wins, and we feel uncomfortable about that. So all the names that you just mentioned, those movies that you just mentioned, we're like, ugh, like, we feel battered by those stories. They're pointing out glitches in our system, but we feel battered because basically the bad guy won. I don't think we feel that in Hunger Games. At the end of Hunger Games, it's a dark drama, but I think we see it as a drama, and we're so happy that she won. And I think that in the end, because she was forced into this situation, it's a barbaric situation. She had to do barbaric things, but we feel happy that she won, and we feel like she overall is a positive force in the story, and that if you opened her heart, that it was self-sacrifice. She did everything for Prim primarily, didn't needed to get home to Prim, didn't feel like her mom would be appropriate person to raise Prim. So she didn't want Prim dying in the Hunger Games, but she also didn't want to leave Prim left at home with her ineffectual mother who's not going to care for her properly. For me, that's where it boils down to, is that I think she is self-sacrificing. And
So
she did everything good that she could, but played the game and did what it took also to win.
yeah, and I yeah, shoot.
Mic
Okay.
drop.
Yeah, I know. Like I am. Yeah. Um. I I
But I
can
want to
see
concede to
that.
you too. I want to concede to you too, Amy, though, and say that I do think this movie has some blending. I think
Yes.
that it's a
Well, see,
dark
and that's I
drama.
think where I'm
Yeah.
at is the fact that, all right, we've got the 1-2. I'm gonna say, okay, we do have a 1-2 punch there at the IED with the norm breaker. Um, and I see this with a lot of children's works, and young adults not far off from a lot of, these dynamics that I've been seeing is when you get a work for younger audiences, they can start their own story and still have a not have to pay the consequences, because that's what we're teaching kids usually is, yes, you can accidentally start something, even though, yeah, you walk out in the road, if a parent's there watching you, they can pull you out. um, we're more forgiving for those that start their own story. And I
In a children's work. Yeah.
yeah, in the children's works and in the young adults. And so I I wonder if what we have here is actually some sort of variant that gives us the ability to have that mixed IED and have the death, not knowing what her motives were, being in her head, and the duality of her, which points to a satire. That maybe we do have a satire with a traditional hero. I don't know.
All right. So my final thing is I don't agree with that, but I do agree with the blending. And I think we have a drama that has some satiric blending at the IED, and it's just a darker story. So we get some darker things. So we get some little bit of satiric blending in her actions and motivations. But I definitely would not call her as anti-hero, and I would not call this a satire. So we agree to not we agree to disagree,
Yes,
which is
it's
just
whether or
fine.
not we feel we want to place the emphasis on that IED, that she was pulled into it, or whether she started it, and how far would she have gone? Would she have chosen PETA over her sister? Would she have
And we'll
maybe
never
hoped
know.
her mother could have stepped up to the plate? Which we find
Yeah.
out later she did. But we're not talking about those stories. We're just
Yes.
talking about what is given to us in the initial Hunger Games story.
So we want to know, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Exactly.
Are there did we miss some juicy points? And so make your argument down below. We would love to know what you have to think. We don't think that there's necessarily an actual definitive answer. We just think that these are interesting anomalies to look at in the patterns, and it makes for a pretty brilliant story.
Again,
And
this is not a formula. This is just a way to look at what's happening structurally.
all right, so check us out on our webpage, on our Facebook group, our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Ask us questions. We'll answer them here. And thank you for joining us for the Lightning Zone.
All right. Thank you very much.